And 3, 2, 1, we live.
Welcome back to Tactical Mortgage Talk. I'm Tom Stearns. Is with me always is my co-anchor, Mr. Brad Stinson.
What up, Tommy?
How are we doing, my friend? Hey, listen, as you all know, Brad Stinson is a United States Marine Corps veteran. He is a certified trainer through Military Mortgage Bootcamp, a huge veteran advocate. Brad and I came together earlier at the beginning, just at the end of this year, rather, and put together Tactical Mortgage Talk. Tactical Mortgage Talk is for our veterans, and it's about our veterans. Our biggest push and mission with doing this is to recognize our veterans and those nonprofits out there that need help spreading their word in a digital world. So today in studio with us, it's a very big honor. I get to introduce this guy because Brad always gets to introduce the Marine Corps or the Navy SEAL. And so I'm absolutely honored to have Mr. David Garrett, who is the head of our VA Underwriting at Benchmark Mortgage, come aboard. I mentioned this in our last podcast as we wrapped up talking about having David on. David is a huge veteran advocate. What I think is probably one of the coolest things about him is not only does he have the heart to serve veterans, he has the heart to train people like Brad, myself, and all of our other colleagues within our company to get us to that yes answers. So without further ado, brother, I'm juiced to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on here. It's certainly something that I'm glad you guys got this thing going, because there's a lot of, not only do you have small classes and stuff, you like to teach people different things, but being able to get to the masses, not just from a face-to-face standpoint, and in our technological world, being able to get out there and talk to people is the way that you guys have put together this podcast is really amazing, and I'm sure it's going to be helpful to a lot of people.
Nothing is more amazing than your goatee, brother.
Thanks. I put some beard oil in it this morning just for you. How's that?
Tom, we got to add the goatee to his bio, man.
We should.
Thanks for coming on, brother, man. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Tell our listeners a little bit about your background, how long you've been underwriting and been in this crazy origination world.
Well, first off, what is an underwriter? Like, what is underwriting? What are we talking about there?
Underwriting is basically, there's a front end process, a middle process, and an end. The front end process is where everybody kind of comes in and you start the application. You have some knowledge base and of what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, what that veteran is trying to get to, and an end result. And you do a lot of things up front, what we would consider like junior underwriting when it gets to a processing level, where they're taking information, putting it in order, kind of putting everything in one little piece, and then it moves to underwriting. And underwriting, at that point in time, what our job is we take all the information that you've gathered, and we look at it and we digest it and we mull it over and we look at the different things that you put in there, and then we try to make sure that it's going to meet VA's guidelines for financing. And sometimes it's more difficult than others, and sometimes they're super easy, and you never know what you're going to come into. So you have to be very well versed and in all the guidelines and everything that's out there. So underwriting is really the piece of the puzzle that's the yes or no piece. And then from there it goes to the third step, which is closing and trying to make sure that everything happens on that things. But at the end of the day, it's the underwriter's job to make sure that we're doing the right things. One, for VA, to keep it a strong program, and make sure that we're following their guidelines, because they have a track record, obviously, of very successful loans, and a very successful loan portfolio. And that is the reason behind it, is because they give a lot of latitude to the underwriters to be able to do some of the things that they want to do.
Common sense.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things, that was difficult, because when you came through 2008 and kind of when the market started to fall to pieces, one of the hardest things was all the investors and everybody started pulling back. They started kind of tightening up the ropes, tightening up the reins, and not allowing that common sense judgment, not allowing those bits and pieces for what a true underwriter was. An underwriter's job is to decipher things and to see if there really truly is a problem, if there's a bad credit issue, and differentiate the difference between a financial hardship versus a financial mismanagement, because mismanagement obviously is something that is within our control, but a financial hardship sometimes is not. So it's something. I've been in underwriting for over 20 years now. I'm a DE, I'm a SAR. I've underwritten everything. I don't know if there's a loan that I haven't underwritten at one point in time or another. And the wonderful thing about coming here and this initiative that we have with Benchmark is that it's allowed us the ability to kind of open those things back up and to use our minds and to use the knowledge and stuff that we had. So one of the great things, and I don't know how, if you guys wanted to talk about this, but it's something I love about how we set things up at Benchmark. So we have underwriters that are 20, 30-year veterans in the business, and they've been doing this for a long time, and they're extremely good at what they do, and they're extremely knowledgeable. They've been around and been through about every scenario you can possibly imagine. And the great thing about that is that you have their knowledge base. So what we did was, because of the uptick that we had in the volume, was we took girls that have been underwriting DE and FHA loans for a long time and brought them into the VA realm. So last year we trained, I believe, 15 new SARs to join the group, and we're now up to 24 SAR underwriters in our group. So the wonderful thing about that is that you've got 30-year veterans who know a lot about the ins and outs of, say, something like a GI Bill, or being able to pull a non-purchasing spouse's pay stub to delete some residual income requirements. And then you've got the new girls who come in and they challenge some of the things. So where the reins got pulled back and the guidelines got tightened up in 2008, 2009, when the market crashed and everything kind of went to crap, you now got these newer girls that are switching over and saying, well, why can't we do this? And so every Wednesday we have a phone call. I have a phone call with them at 2:00 where we go over guidelines. We go over situations that we have in branches, and we talk about things that we've done to correct certain things, what's acceptable, situations that have come up throughout the week and how we handled it, so that everyone is on the same page and how we find a way around it and get to a yes, and which is a big piece of the puzzle. You have some people that will just look at a problem and say, I can't do anything with that. That's not what we do. We are bound and determined to find a yes and find an answer to get our veterans through that process to their dream of homeownership. So,
and I love it.
So I absolutely love it. I think it's great. But so for our let's just assume that we've got multiple veterans that are listening to our cast.
You could say the Marines with crayons. Go ahead.
Right. Let's touch base just a little bit and show them a little bit about the Benchmark magic, in the sense of, you mentioned the direct endorsement or the DE. Let's tell those folks or those agents out there, what does it mean to be a DE? What does it mean to be a SAR? Let's touch base on the SAR and how it becomes powerful in the sense of, in a Tidewater situation. And let's touch on that a little bit.
Sure. So in order to become a SAR, there are certain qualifications that an underwriter has to meet. In fact, there's certain qualifications that an underwriter has to meet to get to a DE. So when you start off as an underwriter, you start off in the conventional world, and you kind of go along with Fannie and Freddie, and you learn the ropes and you learn what you do there. And typically you'll sit in that realm for sometimes 5 to 10 years, and being in that particular realm before you're even given an opportunity to attempt to become a DE underwriter. So a DE is direct endorsement for FHA, and the biggest piece of that puzzle is value. Your direct endorsement allows you to actually look at an appraisal and say whether the value is correct or it's wrong, whether it meets your MPRs, which are minimum property requirements, and find the things that need to be done to that house in order for FHA to say this is an acceptable property. So that's the largest piece of the puzzle as a DE, because you learn the underwriting in conventional world, then you move to the appraisal, which becomes a large piece for an FHA. You have to be a government underwriter for a minimum of 3 years in order to get into the VA realm. So when you have somebody, their chronological order is conventional, work that 5 to 10 years, work into FHA for a minimum of 3, most of the time somewhere between another 3 to 5 years before they get to a realm where a company's willing to allow them to attempt to become a SAR.
And so, not to interrupt, but this is the power that I want to show our listeners. You said you guys transformed or certified 16 this year?
Correct. Yeah, we had 14 last year. We pulled in another 2 this year. So we train them. One of the great things about VA is they allow you to train online now. And so what we did was we pulled each one of the people that we knew had the credentials in order to do that. Some of our top FHA underwriters, extremely fast, very knowledgeable, very thinking oriented for positive movement. And we took those people and said, look, we want to give you an opportunity to become a SAR, which,
what the hell is a SAR?
Staff appraisal reviewer. So the SAR, the biggest thing with the SAR, and it's honestly, it's the last feather in the cap. It's really the coup de grace of underwriting. To become a SAR, you've hit the top tier. And so it's difficult for people to get into that. As an underwriter, it's one of the things you shoot for. It's like that's your end goal. That's what you want to be. And so when we move these guys from that FHA and give them a chance to become a SAR, it's huge for them. But we train them online. So we go through all the online courses. We do everything that's on there. We go through VA's appraisal review section. And then when they get to that point and they're done and they've been approved by VA to become a SAR, that's not the end for us. We move them from that point in time to train with one of the girls that has been here forever so that they know we're getting the nuts and bolts correct. Then if they want to challenge some of the things that some of the girls, used to be, they kind of pull back a little bit and say, I'm not sure we can do that. And now you've got these younger girls that are saying, why can't we do that? And not everybody makes it. We did have a couple of guys that we brought in that we thought could do it, and through training and working with them hand in hand, there were just things that they couldn't pick up, and so it's not easy. It's not an easy realm, and you have to be able to think on your toes, and that's one of the great things about VA is it gives you a lot of latitude to be able to make decisions on your own as long as you can rationalize them. But you have to be able to do that.
Exactly. That's what the VA guidelines are written for, right?
Correct.
They're vague in nature because it leaves everything up to the lender.
Correct.
Right? Telling you what you cannot do. So as long as you apply common sense, you can tell the story and you can prove the story in a paper trail, you should be able to get that loan closed all day, every day.
Right. One of the things that I try to teach the girls is, it's not a way to, when, everybody's been around, you get conditions stuff on loans. The way that I train the girls is if they want to add a condition, I don't mind, whatever they put in there, review the file, find out what you think is there, and then put the condition in. And then before you send that approval back is go back and reread every condition that you put in there. And are you adding that condition to meet a guideline? Or are you adding it to make yourself feel good about something? And so what I've created with these girls is a base where they can think on their feet and say, maybe I don't necessarily need this. Here's my mentality. Here's the way we get around this. But there's a lot of storytelling with VA. You have people that are in certain situations, and VA allows you the latitude to make your own decision. They want you to make your own decision. The guidelines really are written to tell you what you can't do. And if it doesn't say you can't do it, then typically you can, as long as it makes sense. So I tell people, as long as it's not illegal, it benefits the veteran, and it doesn't go directly against a black and white guideline, as long as we can make sense of that, we should be able to do the loan.
Fantastic, man. I love it. Sounds like you got a little gremlin boot camp going on over there, man.
Yeah, I run them good. It's great. The girls are wonderful, and we got a couple guys in there too, but they're just a good group. I mean, when we pick up in our conversations, we try to go over everything because the guidelines are always ever changing. Yep. We try to go through them every week because I don't want to get things too far down the road where we miss it. I want them to be able to see it, and then when they come across it, like for instance, we'll go over one guideline that'll say, we don't need, the new thing is they don't need marketing conditions. Well, we haven't really had one of those up until the point now we're starting to get things in. So they're looking at the dates. One of the things we do is in our meeting is, did anyone have one of these that came up? Oh yeah, here was my example. So we learn by those examples. We learn by the conversation, and without that conversation, or having a conversation once a month or once every quarter, it's just too far. It's too long for someone to keep that knowledge in their head without seeing the experience. And that's one of the biggest things to learning is I learned why or what I can do and what I can't do. But if I don't experience it and I don't have it happen right now, I may forget it. So when we have
Oh,
those
yeah.
quick meetings, we have that weekly meeting, we have something that comes up. We have somebody give an example. And then you can remember that in your head. Oh, yeah, well, Tess said she had this thing that popped up on this loan. This is how it was handled. So those examples, although they're not necessarily their own, become their own as they work through these things. So it's just a really good learning facility, and we try to make sure that we have extremely open communication. I want them to challenge some of the things. I want them to bring stuff to the forefront. And you'll hear girls all the time say, well, how did you handle this? Or does anybody know how to handle this? Or I had this situation come up. What do I do? And when you're sitting in a room with 24, 25 SAR underwriters with 30 plus years of experience down to 2 years of experience being a SAR, if we can't come to a good decision, there just isn't one, So
Yeah, well, then, that's when you would even take it one step further, call the RLC, right?
Sure.
Right.
So we had, one of the great things about the relationships that we've built, we've had Jay with us, and he's allowed a bond to be created with Mark Jameson, and through Mark Jameson, we've met other people, and we've gone into most of the markets, and we found gotten contact information from all the LPOs. And so when we have situations like that, what I've done is I've reached out to each one of them and tried to explain to them, look, I'm not the guy who's going to send you 15 emails a day asking you to calculate income. That's not what they're there for. They're there for very specific, very pinpointed situations that if we can't think through it or it doesn't make sense, how do we what we're proposing, will it be acceptable to VA? And that's, so sometimes our mindset is what we're doing to them, and we're asking them questions of, if I have this mindset for this loan and I feel like it makes sense, will VA have a problem with it? Because there's no guidelines against it, but it is sometimes questionable. So we have all of our LPOs. I have pretty much an email, I think, for every LPO out there. We've bonded good communications with them. We have direct contact information. So when we have problems that come up, for instance, we had one, I'll give you an example. We had one a couple of days ago where on a VOR, it came back that said the borrower had been living there for 6 or 7 years, never missed a payment, wasn't in arrears, was current, up to date. But in the little line, it said, but if this guy moves out, we may end up taking him to court in a civil suit because of some of the things that he's done. So you're like, hold on, you're going to get sued? But then you start thinking, okay, well, what has he done wrong? Because he's paid his rent on time. He's done everything that he's supposed to do. So from a credit standpoint, the VOR makes sense. But from this other standpoint, this guy may end up getting sued in court. He may have a payment. He may have something else. So in that situation, you're like, well, there's no guidelines for this. How do I handle this? How would VA look at this? Because this guy may potentially get a lawsuit after we close our loan and he moves out of his apartment. And so those are situations where, one, we need a quick answer. Sometimes you can't wait 2 days or 48 hours. I have 48 hours to return emails, and you send them into to the RLCs, to the general email things. We don't always have that, and I'm sure other lenders run into that problem too, where they're like, man, the best I can do is send in an email and wait a couple of days, or 24 hours, 48 hours, however long it takes. We're lucky in that instance. We don't have that problem. When we send an email, I'm not sending it to a general email. I'm sending it directly to a person of authority that can give me an answer, and we can move forward.
Okay. So for our non-mortgage nerds out there, guys,
if we haven't lost you yet,
everybody, what an RLC is and an LPO.
LPO is loan production officer. So they are, as you go up the ranks, you have your normal SARs. Everyone at VA is a SAR from my understanding. I'm sure there's probably a couple that are still in training, but so you have all your SARs. Then you have your levels up of those people. Your LPOs are basically the top tier of the underwriting section of VA's realm. Our RLC is Regional Loan Center. So there are particular sections of the state. They break them up into little pods. So each little section has its own RLC that dictates. That's where the insuring comes from. That's where the loan will be housed if it goes back to VA. That's the people who are going to look at it. So when you get an answer, sometimes, nowadays you call in, there's an 800 number. You call in the 800 number and it's a round robin. So you may call, you need St. Paul Regional Loan Center because your loan's in Michigan, and you end up getting someone in California, or actually for them it would be Arizona. Get a Phoenix office. Well, that Phoenix office is giving you an answer sometimes based on the information that's there, but it's not necessarily where that loan's going to end up. So when you get to St. Paul may say, well, we don't see it that way. That's not how we handle it. So you have to be able to get the direction from where that loan's going to sit to know that when the end result comes in, if somebody audits that file and they look at it and say, man, I'm not sure about this. Well, here's my email from your RLC and your LPO that said this was fine.
So what I'm trying to highlight, which again, thank you for that. What I'm trying to highlight, and I know, Brad, you know where I'm going with this as well as David, is for our builders that are listening to this, for our potential new VA buyers that are out there, we talk about the RLC, the LPO, we talk about SAR having 16. What I'm trying to highlight is the benchmark never quits, the benchmark magic, that look at the power, look at the resource. When you come to us, you know, like you said, like you always say, Brad, do you want to go to war with a boot or
the elite special forces? And that
elite special forces
we have here at the home front.
And that is what I'm trying to show to our listeners is look at, this is why we are those VA specialists. The reason we have and are able to do things we are is because this guy that we've got in this call right now and the team that he has underneath him, from underneath him to above to our upper management as well.
Can you imagine the world if Gremlin and that goatee were out doing the forward-facing stuff? Can you imagine what would be attracted?
It's funny. It's funny you say that, because when I first started in the mortgage business, that's what I did. I worked for Wells Fargo. You were asking me about how long I've been in the business when I started. I started with Wells Fargo straight out of college, at Wells Fargo Financial, actually. And so we did everything, which was it was fun and a little crazy at the same time. Wells Fargo Financial actually is no longer around, but you made your own loan decisions in-house. So we would generate our own leads, we'd generate our own borrowers. We did everything from signature loans to credit cards to car loans to home loans. And so when you made these loans, you made your own credit decision with the borrowers, and you had to collect them. So you had your own bad debt, and it was your own personal office. So if you made that loan, and it was all in general region, so your office, you serviced the people literally within a few miles of you. But when you made that loan to those people, you also had to collect it. There were so many times we would go once a week. We'd go what we called hot knocking, where you'd go up to a door, knock on there, and say, "Hey, I need money." So it was odd. I mean, there were times people were like, "Get off my front porch," but when you look at it from a standpoint of being around the block, I understand what it's like on the front line. I know that it's hard out there, and it's a volatile market and a very compressed market. And so, not to toot my own horn, but to have someone like me with that experience, knowing what you're going through on the front end of things, right. Also knowing what a borrower may be going through, because I've collected loans. I've sat down with people in their front room asking for payments to realize what they can and can't do, where their situations are, and realizing that there is a real family there, that there are real people there, and there are real situations, to the point where you go back to the underwriting and meeting the underwriting guidelines after 20 years of doing this in the business. I've seen it all. And so I feel like I bring a lot to the table with what is, with what we can and can't do, and making sound credit decisions. I talk to the girls all the time and I say, we're doing loans that other people aren't, but we're not doing loans that we shouldn't. And there's a difference. You have to be able to back up your reasoning behind what you're doing. Isolate credit problems. If you can isolate them and you see, this is what it is. You had a credit issue here, and I can see when it started and I can see when it ended, and you have documentation to back that up of what happened. I lost my job. We moved from here to there, or had, whatever happened at that point in time. You can isolate that piece, and you can just basically pluck it out of their credit. Were they good before, and are they good now? Because if they are, then they're not financial mismanagement. They're not people who are a problem. They had a problem. And there's a difference. Again, someone who is a problem is a habitual problem. Someone who has a problem can be, we can work around those things.
Right. Awesome. So, Brad, let's highlight some things here. Let's share some stories, if you will,
from the veterans home front. All right. So last week I received a call from a girl I went to high school with. her and her husband, who's a Army veteran, and they decided that they were going to do what every normal couple does, purchase a home. But they had nowhere to, no idea where to start, so on and so forth. So they reached out to a trusty ally, myself. I sent her to, full disclosure, full transparency. I sent her to a person that I thought I could trust, that I knew was a highly skilled VA home loan specialist, not with our company, but with a different company, because her and her husband live in a different state. Well, fast forward about 5 months, and I get the call. She's hysterical on the phone that I just got denied, is what she said. I just got denied, and we're supposed to close in 1 week. Now, and like I couldn't even formulate words. Like, what? How? What do you mean? I don't understand what's going on. So I got her on the phone, and after about 3 minutes of the hysterical, like hyperventilating type actions, I got her to calm down and said, okay, let me, and I was drawing a blank on your name because I only see Gremlin Garrett. Right?
Let me call David.
I'm like, I'm going to hook you up with Gremlin. Gremlin's our head of VA Underwriting here, and me, you, and him are going to hop on a call, and we're going to logically talk through this, right? Now, we all know in the mortgage world that the quickest course of action in 7 days is to close with your current lender, right? So I even preferenced it with like, look, we're not trying to steal you by any means. We're just going to ask you some questions to see if they've explored these options, because the quickest route is to go through them.
Well, and we even had that conversation with her. We're on the phone. I said, look, if this person can pull this back from the grave, I don't want you to start with us. That's one of the great things about what you and I do and how we handle things. We're not going to say, we'll come over here because it makes us money.
Correct.
We want them in the home. We want them in the home. And if that's the fastest way to get there, we'll tell you that's the fastest way.
It's never about the money for me. Never,
right.
And that's what makes me different from the other loan officers throughout our world. All right. But, so we're talking to her, and Gremlin's like, well, that's stupid. To sum it up, he's like, well, yeah, that's stupid. So she decided that she wanted to go with us. Okay. So she got in, it was Friday night at, what time was that at? Like 7 something. I don't know. Whatever.
It was about 5:30 when we started talking, about 6:30 when we got off the phone. We had her in the hands of an LO here that's licensed in Missouri by about 6:45, because they were in the middle of doing something else. And shortly afterwards, she's disclosed.
Okay. So there you go. Wow. So we had the ball rolling within 2 hours. Okay. So there were, I'm not going to lie. It was definitely a tricky loan. However, fast forward 1 calendar week is today. What's the good news, Gremlin?
We're going to be closing about 3:00.
We're going to be closing in a couple hours. So that is freaking outstanding. And that is the power.
Here's the thing, we worked around a situation. Imagine trying to close a borrower who doesn't have a job.
Oh, wow.
That happened. This person currently is not employed. They're a Boilermaker. So, Boilermaker is not an easy trade, and they're hit and miss. And they work when nobody else does. So it's kind of like they have specific seasons. That doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to manage their money. So we go back, we get 2 years of history of being on this particular Boilermaker job. We go back and we get a 2-year history of earnings, which wasn't necessarily 2016, 17, and year to date. They started in September 16. So we started from there. I said, let's just get every bit of earnings from the time you started until now, unemployment, every Boilermaker job, everything you had in there. And then we're going to top it off with that you have some GI money coming in. As we'll use it as a compactor. We can't really use it as anything else. Can't use it for qualifying. But I also want to see your rent. I want to see your rent history during that time frame. I want to see that 2-year rent history so that I can not only say beyond a shadow of a doubt that we do have unemployment. You do get that. You qualify for it. You make your other income during that time frame, but you also made your payments during the times you were drawing unemployment. And so you solidify things. You make a sound decision, not just on the income piece, but you shore it up with, here's why. Here, I've got a rental history on a payment that's higher than what mine's going to be, and I made it during a time when I wasn't working. So is it safe to say that whenever you're unemployed now and you're drawing unemployment, you've got that income, that you can make the payment then? Of course it is. It's just It's what they've done. That's what they're used to. So, we weeded through the muck and the mire, and we came out shining like a diamond on the other end, and there was quite a few hiccups and stuff in the middle, some things they didn't know about even from the other lender. They've been with the other lender for 6 weeks and had been turned down. She was going on, this was either going to be the third or fourth time. When she called and was talking to Brad, she just got declined because they couldn't validate his job. He wasn't working, so they couldn't validate his income. They had declined him from that place, and he was getting ready to move her from that lender to another lender for the third time, possibly the fourth time, and trying to redisclose again that evening. And I was like, I don't know what we can do to. You can do what you want to. I said, I can tell you, just like Brad was saying in the beginning, if he can get it done, he'll be faster. If it's with the same person, if you're starting from scratch, well, and you've got all your documentation ready to go, I'll guarantee you we'll beat that punch.
Yep. And we did, and we proved it. And, I can't even begin to describe how powerful it is for myself and all the other loan officers. And I'm not saying go ahead and reach out to Gremlin and work through these problems, because, you have to do your own research. You have to dive into it yourself, because if you go straight to the source every single time, that's going to really tremendously decrease what you and your team do, right?
Well, and again, to kind of toot our own horn, as we were talking about in the very beginning of this, what is an RLC? What's an LPO? That's one of those scenarios that we went directly to the LPO and said, hey, I need this in writing that this is acceptable. I understand the situation. I recognize what it is. I recognize he's a union member. There's no real guidelines around this. Is this acceptable? He's currently not working. We got an email directly from the LPO that said, yes, we would accept that.
Yeah. So let's here. That's awesome. So here's another one. You remember this one, David? Number one real estate agent for me in Kalamazoo. He is the number one real estate agent in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Calls me. We have a competing offer, but guess what? The property is zoned commercial. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Property zone commercial, and we need to know that VA will accept the financing and allow us to do VA financing on it by noon. And I'm like, dude, it's 11:45. I'm like, really? So, we get on the phone, call the Gremlin. You reached out to the RLC or the LPO, and within 15 minutes, we had written proof from the LPO that it was acceptable to do it. And that closed 2 weeks ago. And then that Marine was ordered up on Title 10, and we closed with his wife at the table. But that was a huge win for us. And in a matter of 15 minutes. And like I've said to every real estate agent that I've told that story, no other company would I have an answer in 15 minutes that I've worked for over the 21 years of my career. None.
It's tough, and one of the great things is there isn't a lot of levels with Benchmark. We don't take you have direct contact with your underwriter, and it's a wonderful thing. You're able to build relationships. You learn how that underwriter works. They get used to you, you get used to them, and you have that knowledge base. And then the next level is me, and and that's about it. I mean, unless there's just a business decision that we have to make on loans that something crazy came up at the last minute, and that goes one more level above me. That's it. There's not a lot of fluff in between. So it's literally just straight from here to me, and me straight to VA, and and we have answers. So it's really cool to be able to work in that kind of realm and build those relationships. And again, it's not something where we beat the RLCs up. We have to make our decisions. We have to, as Benchmark, we send very few things into the RLC specifically because we want to make our own decisions. That's what our job is. We need to think through the problem, unless it's just literally so far out of the box that we need, we don't want it to be unsaleable. So that's when we get the guys in, for some of those crazy things.
I feel like the only time that I talk to you is when I have a VA loan that's been turned down by 3 or 4 other, or let me say the big 3, right? And that's typically when we've gotten the RLC. I mean, every deal that I've dealt with you in the past, say 45 days, have been deals that we have closed that others have denied because they didn't take the time to do the due diligence, which is right up there with our never quit motto.
Yeah. We just closed a loan down in Texas on a borrower that was turned down twice because they couldn't produce their COE. We got online, pulled the COE in 2 minutes. I don't understand.
Why does it? It shouldn't even take you 2 minutes. It should take you.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, and I was like, you need to tell me they were turned. It was great, the great borrowers, but for whatever reason, they couldn't get their COE. It took literally a couple of minutes, maybe a minute and a half. We had their COE in hand, and out we went.
I type with these 3 fingers, so it takes me a little bit longer to pull a COE, but I can do it in under a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't get it. That's the thing that just blows me away with lenders is like, how this is the easiest piece
block and tackle stuff.
Easiest piece of paper that you could possibly get, but it's the single most important piece of paper that you need for the VA home loan.
Right.
How can you not log into this website, take the extra 10, 15, 30 seconds to type it all in, and it spits right back out at you? You're golden. It just blows me away.
Yeah. Hey, not to jump off track, but Brad, is that a velvet chair you're sitting in?
Yeah.
What is with that chair?
It's okay. So it's the holidays. I'm down visiting my wife's family, and they don't have an office or like a desk or anything. So I had to adapt and overcome. Okay, that's what Marines do. So
wait a second. You travel with that flag?
I traveled with this flag, yes,
and his Yeti microphone,
and my Yeti microphone, and my podcasting stuff, because I'm going to be down here for about 5 days, so I have a few things I have to do. But the room that I'm in right now used to be the baby's room. The baby and the mom and dad all moved out. So I'm sitting in the nursing chair. There's a recliner.
Now it's a torture facility.
Yep.
Exactly.
And then I'm in a recliner with a TV tray holding up my laptop. And oddly enough, are you ready for this one? The high chair is my camera mount.
Perfect. Perfect. And that's why TMT, Tactical Mortgage Talk, is coming straight at you from all parts of the globe, baby.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Cool.
I'd like to throw in a great success story if we got time for it.
Oh yeah, we have plenty of time.
We're closing on a loan. In fact, I believe we finished up the CD yesterday, possibly even the final CD, and we may have been going in to close now. We had a veteran who came back from active military, and when he got back home, had some major family issues, lost a couple parents, had PTSD, very, very deep, got hooked into drugs, a lot of drinking, and lost everything, lost house, lost his cars, lost his family, lost his wife, kids. Really one of the saddest stories I think that I've heard from when you think about what somebody goes through when they come back and how they're treated. It's not always something that's within their control, and sometimes their mindset isn't always there. But we look back at this person, and over the past year, he decided that he needed help. He was living with his drug dealer, and was about, from what the doctor said, he wasn't far from death. A little bit longer, and he probably would have been dead. Malnutrition and had some major issues going on. So gets enrolled into the VA program to get dry, and gets done. And in his area, there was a place called 3 Hots and a Cot. And this business is designed for homeless veterans and veterans who have PTSD and learning to cope with things. And just a great organization. A guy just runs a great business. So he allowed him to stay there, and got him into some mental health classes where they were going around and speaking to everyone and let everybody tell their stories. And this guy became such a shoulder to lean on with all the people that were in this building that they gave him a job and they allowed him to work. They didn't pay him money in the beginning. They paid him. He was allowed to stay at this place rent free for the work and stuff that he did. So he was allowed to stay there rent free. And he worked there. Then he got so good at what he was doing, and there were so many people come to him that they actually hired him on full time as a manager with the company and gave him a full time job. So he started to rebuild his credit somewhat and get some of his credit and stuff put back into place. Had good credit again before, had some credit after, but had a real stretch of where things were bad, and that was where he was at. And so I told the loan officer at the time, I said, this is going to be hard. I said, this is going to be a very difficult loan. It's going to take a lot of documentation, a lot of storytelling. One of the things Jay always says in some of his meetings is, if it's the truth, you should be able to back it up with documentation. And so, those are great words for anyone that's out there, is that if you have a borrower that is telling you the truth and they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing, they're telling you what they said, they should be able to prove it. And so we got with this guy. He sent us all of his entire medical records, every meeting that he had with any type of psychologist, everything that went through there. And we could see his formulation from time that he started till the end time. He was living what we would consider rent-free from this building, but it wasn't necessarily rent-free. They would take his money out of his check. So then we could show that there was actually payments being made and he was still able to keep his credit up for those things coming out. So we isolated his incident. We isolated everything that he had in there. We took a drug addict, a person who was close to death physically from doctor's records, and he did what he needed to do to build himself back up, and we did what we needed to do as a lender to prove that he could handle this, and to prove that this was a good thing for him. We'll be closing here the next day or two for that guy to get his home for the first time since he's been back from active military, since he's lost everything in his life, mom, dad, kids, wife, everybody. And it's just really kind of an emotional thing. And I hope and pray that the loan officer gets us on film, because he's just going to, from what I'm understanding in the letters that the employer wrote for him, I mean, they gave him such high praises, said how much of an amazing person he was, how much people looked up to him, how many people came to him for guidance and everything else. There's a guy who literally turned his life around. We were able to isolate his problem, show that he is a great income source. He has a good income source with great continuity that's there. Pull out his credit that was bad, show that he had some good credit reestablished. Bam, closing a loan.
Wow. Benchmark never quits.
Never.
Hashtag never quits.
Hashtag never quit.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Awesome.
I think that's a good one to end on.
Yeah, I did too. I gotta wrap up some things too, but I
want to just mic dropped it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, hey man, I want to thank you again for coming on our cast again, because we were super juiced to have you. You mean a lot to me, brother. I mean, you're just an awesome leader and a great mentor and teacher. So I can't thank you enough from that standpoint, and everything that you do for me and for my teams here in Grand Haven and Kalamazoo. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I love doing it, man. It's one of my passions, and I love doing it for the right reason and for the right people. And I just think you guys have a hell of a team, and Brad, you guys got a hell of a team, and it just continues to keep moving forward with that. And it's a joy to watch the snowball just rolling down the hill. And I can't wait till it gets to the bottom. It's going to be a big monster.
Well, what was the biggest aha moment for me is when I came back to Benchmark and we went to the teach the teacher event, and there was, part of that event was say yes, right? We're going to get you to the yes. And, how the underwriting has changed. And I was like, okay. Well, I had this client who was actually referred into you and Jim and the underwriting department. And you guys found the yes while you're sitting there talking about, we're going to find your yes. And I was like, holy shit. This is amazing. I think I even went up and talked to you, during the break. I'm like, look at this. And I showed you the email on my phone. Like, my God, this is awesome. Like this
real,
is the power we have, like
it's real.
The fact that
Brad, hey Brad, you're not that special because I talked to him about a loan and I got a yes there too. That was my guy that worked at the NSA in like South Carolina and was moving to Kalamazoo.
I'm not talking about me being special. I'm talking about how special the veterans home front is. Like I saw, like proof is in the pudding. Like put up or shut up. And as they're telling me, we're all about getting the yes here. I was like, okay, all right. I'll believe it when I see it. And no shit, within like you said it, and I was like, okay. And then the email came through. I was like, okay, all right. I buy it. So I mean, it's fantastic to have an underwriting department in which we do not have to fight with to get a loan to go through.
Right.
It's fantastic that we don't have to spend, like my old company, I had to spend hours upon hours training underwriters on VA guidelines, because VA guidelines, FHA guidelines are two totally different. And but people draw the parallels. So I mean, it's I can't wait to crush 2019 and crush souls in 2019, because that's what we're gonna do. All right. So I think that we need to get you up to our state to have a Stump the SAR event.
All right, bring it on.
We're gonna do some fishing too.
Okay, I'm down with that.
So,
I'll barbecue. Well, no, wait, you barbecue. I'll fillet the fish.
How do you barbecue with that goatee, man? Doesn't it catch on fire?
No, you just got to stand it to the side,
or have longer tongs, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I use 2x4s to kind of flip the fish.
That's awesome.
All right, guys.
Well, hey, should we wrap, partner?
Yeah, let's wrap, man.
Okay, so listen, TMT, Tactical Mortgage Talk coming at you. Our guest today was Dave Garrett, head of VA Underwriting at Benchmark and our Veterans Home Front. Again, huge thank you to have him. Behalf myself and Brad, we want to wish you all a very happy holidays. We'll be kicking it again next week because that's what him and I do. But be smart, don't drink and drive. Brad, anything to close with, my friend?
No, man, just keep getting after it, dude. We have some fantastic closings coming up, some great stories to tell. And yeah, man, have everybody who's still listening, if we haven't scared them off yet, have a great holiday, safe holiday, and tune in next week. Got something in store for you.
All right. Hey, if you haven't already, if you see a veteran or first responder, thank them for their service. Gentlemen, have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.